Destination by Oxana Eliahu. Introduction. Many times after sharing my testimony in churches and congregations, people have asked me if I had the story of my life written in a book. At first I didn't pay attention to those questions about the book, but as people continued requesting, I prayed and asked God if this was His idea. I am like Gideon, always trying to make sure that I hear the right voice. In my prayer I said, God, if this is your will, please give me another direct confirmation. Please let someone say these exact words to me. Oxana, you need to write a book of your testimony. A few weeks later, we did a revival service in Butler, Missouri. I had only 45 minutes to share and sing, so I couldn't even share my whole story, just a little part of it. At the very end, when almost everybody had left, a woman approached me, and without any greeting, with no hello or shalom, she said to me, Oxana, you need to write a book of your testimony. Wow! I had goosebumps. This surely was the confirmation. I knew I had to take it seriously now. How in the world could I write a book? I even have an accent in every language that I speak. It just seemed to be a huge giant that I would never be able to fight. Finally, I pulled myself together and wrote one page of the book. I felt very proud of myself and even showed my first page to some friends. To my big surprise, they said they liked it, but I couldn't go any further. It just was too hard for me. I felt like Jonah, who didn't want to go to Nineveh. One day, after ministering in a Russian church in Oregon, one young lady came to talk to us. She wanted us to go together for dinner. At the restaurant, she asked Boaz and me to share a story about how we met, and we gladly told her our love story. The next day, she wrote me on Facebook that our story really touched her heart and also gave her hope and encouragement. Well, I thought to myself, why should I write the whole story of my life? It's so long and complicated. Why not start with a shorter story? I felt like I found a solution. I would just create a love story novel, which was also a great testimony and had a message by itself. I even had a catchy title for it, How I Met My Boaz and Ended Up in Peculiar. I started writing, but I still struggled. So I decided to take a writing course online. I also read a book called Writing Life Stories by Bill Rohrbach and signed up for critique writing groups. When I brought my writings to the critique group and read the first chapter of my love story, they said to me, you can't just start the story like that. You have to give us some background. I wrote 3 pages of my background and came to the writing group again. I read my new pages with the condensed and compressed story of my life, hoping that now I would be done with the background and would be able to concentrate and continue with my love story again. They said, oh, this is much better, but we would like to hear more about what happened with you in Russia, Italy, Canada, and in Israel. Oh no, I'm not going to write the whole story. This is impossible. I decided I would just go to a different critique group. I couldn't believe that at the other critique writing group they also suggested that I write more about my past. Well, I felt convinced that it was God speaking to me through all those different people. I felt that I couldn't escape anymore. I had to write the whole story of my life because it is actually His story, and He is the real author of my life and of this book. My father always wanted to have a daughter named Vita. This was his mother's name. My grandmother Vita died at a very young age when my dad was only 14 years old. In Jewish tradition, it's a custom to call the children by the name of the close relatives who pass away for the sake of continuation of the name and its memory. My grandfather Oscar from my dad's side was alive when my mom got pregnant with me. He was excited while expecting his first and only grandchild to be born. But unfortunately, he got very sick and died just 2 months before I was born. After his death, both of my parents decided to use the name Oscar for the baby who was due to come. When they realized that the newborn was a girl, they tried to find a Russian name with the letters O, S, K, A, and R, but there was no name like that in Russia. So they found a Ukrainian name, Oxana, that sounded similar. So the name Vita was never used in our family again. It was gone and kind of forgotten. That's why I decided to use the name Vita in my story to give this name life again, especially since the meaning of the word Vita is life. Part 1. A Russian Citizen. Chapter 1. Why Should I Be a Jew? At times, children hear things when we adults are sure that they aren't even listening. Vita is a smart little girl. She might understand more than we think, my father said. No, she is too young to comprehend. Please, Albert, don't tell her anything now. Overhearing the conversation between my parents, something didn't seem quite right. After all, they were always telling me that I was a big girl, so why was I too young all of a sudden? Paulina, we shouldn't wait any longer to tell Vita. The sooner she knows, the better. She needs to be prepared before she goes to school next year. It's time to tell her who she is. Okay, my mom finally conceded. I peacefully sang a song to my favorite dolly, Tanya, concentrated on dressing her. When I shifted my gaze to the dancing rays of light playing around the room, they looked like the little fairies that everyone always said didn't exist. Daddy had explained that the dance of light was caused by the fluttering leaves on the tall tree outside the window. As the leaves moved with a gentle breeze, they blocked the direct sunlight, creating the dance. I loved that dance. It had always fascinated me, but something had shattered my peace and enjoyment of the moment. I felt an unwelcome anticipation as my heart began to race. Vitusha, come here, sweetie. Daddy wants to tell you something. I picked up my doll from the floor and approached my father. Daddy, please, can you read a story to me and my doll, Tanya? Yes, but first I'd like to tell you something important about yourself. Okay. I looked at my father with wide eyes. You know we live in a big country. My dad kept his voice soft and persuasive. Many different people live here in Russia. Most of them are Russians, but some people, like us, are Jews. There is no difference between us. We are all equal, so it doesn't matter if you are Russian or Jewish, but I want you to know who you are. When you go to school, the teacher might ask your nationality. You'll need to tell her you are a Jew. Our kindergarten teacher said that people who live in Russia are called Russians, I explained confidently. Well, my dad smiled again and continued patiently. That's right. People who live in America, for example, are called Americans. But among them also live Chinese, Indians, Jews, and others. But why, Daddy? Why should I be a Jew? I don't want to be a Jew. I'd heard this word before and felt in my sensitive heart that it meant something bad, something people joked about. You are a Jew because you were born from a Jewish mother and father. I paused, wanting to argue, hoping I had another choice. My dad drew me close and kissed my forehead. I felt secure in his arms. I didn't quite understand why my father, who loved me dearly, wanted me to be a Jew. Daddy, what about my doll Tanya? Is she also a Jew? Dad smiled. Yes, she is a Jew too. Who else is a Jew? Many people, including your aunts, Vera and Shula, your uncles, Nick and Victor, your grandma and grandpa. Our whole family is Jewish. Being satisfied with these answers, I hugged my dad. Now, can we read a story? The Destination by Oxana Eliahu.